Well, good morning. It is not our Friday roundup. This is actually Tuesday, and we wanted to give you what we promised, which was some reflections on the responsibility we all have, not only as Catholics but as citizens, to participate in the voting process and electing new leaders. And Father Schneier and I, this is something that comes up in our conversation as priests when we get together with our buddies, with our families, with the few friends that we still have. We can't escape it right now. Voting and the election is on so many people's minds for a lot of reasons. Now, one disclaimer that I will say, and Father Schneier, jump in here.
Yeah, absolutely.
We get a lot of videos, and good. Some of them are really good. Some of them are very eloquent. We get articles sent to us, and those can serve you as you find them and think about them. But that's not what we're doing here. We're here to just remind all of us of the principles of our Catholic faith and of the teaching of the Church as it relates to voting. And then you have to pray with that. You have to take that and talk with God about that and apply that to what we face here and now. Because when we stand before God, He's not going to say, did you do what Father Schrader said? Did you do what Father Schneier said? He's going to say, what did you do with the truth and the gifts that I gave to you?
Yeah, I think, it's very easy, especially in election time, for us priests to sort of inject our own personal beefs or personal opinions or various things. But if we do that, then we're no better than any talking head on TV. And hopefully this is better than that. But yeah, our job, as Father Schrader said, is to teach the principles, to teach the truths. And from that, it's up to all of you. So that's really our point in all of this. It's not to compete with anybody or anything like that. It's just to merely offer the principles of our Catholic faith as it relates to civic engagement and as it relates to voting.
Yeah, and I think what I am trying to do, because there's a lot of emotion in all of this, is ask God for openness to the truth. And if the truth means that I have to maybe change the way that I view the world, view our country, and believe about how politics is part of that, then I'm constantly asking God, please give me the humility. If there's something in me that needs to change, let it change. And if there's something where I need to stand firm, then give me the courage to do that. I think if that's the way that each of us is entering this, that's a good sign that we're doing it in a holy way. If it's just, hey, I want to find someone who agrees with the way that I agree, right. We can find a priest or a bishop to back up our point of view. Doesn't mean it's right, though.
Right.
Go into this seeking the truth and seeking courage, and then you'll leave room for God to do His work.
Yeah, I think this is a good point. Just we should go into every election, just honestly, every time that we are being taught something, with the idea of seeking the truth rather than seeking validation. I think that's a really, really important thing. So.
All right, so these are some, I guess we're going to throw out their questions or objections and then just respond to them with Catholic teaching and the Catholic ethos. So the first would be the Church shouldn't tell me how to vote. The Church needs to stay out of politics.
Yeah, so I think the main objection, I think, to that mindset is that our Catholic faith should inform everything that we do in our lives. It should be the primary guiding principle by which all of our decisions are based. If we were to somehow exclude God from some facet of our lives, then whatever we're doing in that facet of our lives would not be holy. It would not be faith-filled. And it couldn't be virtuous. So we have to take God with us everywhere we go, and that includes the ballot box, or if you're voting from home, or things like that. We have to be able to bring God into those places. And sure, the Church will never endorse a party or a candidate. It's important that our faith inform our decision-making, especially when it comes to our elections. I think voting is really, in a democracy or a republic form of government, it's our chance to make an impact on the governance of our country. And with that, at least the governance of whether it's our state, our county, or even our whole world. So faith absolutely should play a role, especially when it comes to those very, very important decisions. I think that's an important thing to at least begin with.
And how unnatural and how unhealthy it would be for us to have these little compartments where we say, I'm a faithful Catholic, I'm a believer in Jesus Christ, I'm a faith-filled person, except when it comes to this, I put on a different hat, or I completely shun that part of that I say is so important. That's not who we are as people. We have this beautiful, we're a composite of all these good things, and it informs our perspective, our way of acting, our way of loving, our way of serving each other. So the church can't not say something about the way that we participate in public life, because otherwise we're just putting it in a little box, which is not how God made us.
It never compartmentalize the gospel. That's so important.
Yeah. And if it comes down to a choice of, if the world says, hey, you Catholics be quiet when it comes to an election or when it comes to these important points, we do have to make a choice. Where is our loyalty? Are we citizens of America first? Are we citizens of heaven first? And you and I, in this time in history, we have to really make that decision consciously and sometimes courageously. So it's not always going to be an easy thing where people just say, oh, it's fine, and just be who you are. Sometimes we're going to have to say, no, my first loyalty is to God.
I think when we die, we're not going to die as citizens of the United States. Hopefully we will, though. But we will die as citizens of heaven. We're citizens of God's kingdom first, before we're even Americans. And so that is where our ultimate loyalty lies. It's such an important thing to remember. Give to Caesar what belongs to Caesar, and to God what belongs to God. So.
And related to this, many of the issues that are the hot button issues that separate parties and candidates, they are not first political issues. They have always been and always will be moral issues, ethical issues that political parties have taken on. So we also have to kind of keep first things first, and saying, these are first moral issues, so we need to go to a moral authority, a moral guide before a political guide, because that's who is the final authority and greatest authority on many of these issues.
Even if we end up at maybe the same conclusion as someone who approaches it from a political perspective, how we get there and why we get there matters. I think that's another very important thing to remember.
So the conclusion of this point would be, if you are a Christian, if you are a Catholic, you have a place in public life, in political life, and you should not be ashamed of your beliefs, and you should not forsake your beliefs to participate in that process.
So the next one we can maybe talk about is just the idea of separation of church and state. It's a principle that's thrown around a lot. It's thrown around a lot in our own day and age. So how would you say that relates to voting and just our own participation in public life, with, again, the separation of church and state, at least that principle being at the forefront of a lot of people's mind?
And I think it's often misunderstood and misquoted to mean that because there's a separation of church and state, which is a wise thing, that it means that there should be an elimination of church and state, that there should never be crossover or dialogue between the two. If we know our nation's history, a lot of the people that came here as founding fathers, they came here to escape religious persecution, where one single religion was given priority over all other religions. And basically, if you wanted to be a free citizen of that country, you had to be a member of that church. That's why separation of church and state was so important in the founding of our country. And we would agree with that. It would be wrong for us to say, hey, if you want to be a free American, you have to be Catholic or Buddhist or Jewish or whatever. Separation of church and state ensures, in its truest sense, ensures that people of all faiths have a voice, but that no one voice is more important than the other. And so we agree with the concept, but not with the misunderstanding, which is to say, when it comes to governing the state, the church has no voice at all. That's unhealthy and, once again, unnatural.
Yeah. Well, and I think, again, just the fact that our principles should inform our faith. And that there's no conflict between loving God and loving one's country. The better Catholics we become, the better citizens we inherently become. The one beautiful thing about our Constitution is, yes, it means that Congress can't establish a state religion, but it also provides for the free exercise of our religious beliefs. I think that's immensely important, that we have the freedom to exercise our religion, and to exercise it in a way that is meaningful to us. And this would include the ballot box too. So.
Right. So hopefully that helps a little bit, and at least of examining. I feel like sometimes that's a cop-out, is almost like, well, I'm going to leave my faith off to the side because we have to observe separation of church and state, and that's really a misunderstanding of what that principle is all about.
Yeah.
So another struggle or objection would be that faith is a private matter and should stay personal when it comes to politicians and their exercise of politics.
Yeah, so obviously, religious freedom, especially in our country, is our right. We're able to, again, live out our faith in a way that is meaningful to us. But we also know that we are called to make an impact on the world. In Matthew chapter 5, you are the light of the world. You are the salt of the earth. If we, for some reason, wanted to only be Catholic for our sake and not to show anyone else our faith, or to not make our faith a part of our daily lives, then we would not be living out that call. We have to. It's incumbent on us. It's a command of Christ to make our faith impactful and make it visible. And again, a privileged way we're able to do that in our country is through our voting and through civic engagement. It's immensely important that we show our Catholic faith in all things. So yeah, if we believe that the gospel is the truth, then we can't just keep that to ourselves. We have to spread it. It's the spirit of evangelization that has made the church what it is today. It's not something we can compartmentalize and just keep in one little facet of our lives versus not in this other. So yeah, that's where I would kind of start with that.
Yeah, and we can always go back to the example in the life of Jesus. Jesus was interacting with many people who didn't agree with his teaching, didn't believe in his teaching. That didn't stop him from sharing it, and sharing it in its fullness. He didn't sort of say, well, this group, I'm just not going to talk about it because they might get angry or they might even put me to death. Jesus always taught the gospel in its entirety, but he did it with compassion, with patience, and with love. So bringing our faith into the civil arena doesn't mean we condemn people. We don't say, you're going to hell, you're a horrible person. We follow the lead of Jesus, which is to say, I've been given this great truth that saves, that is life after death, and I have to share it. I have to at least give you the opportunity to share in what I have found. That's what we do with any good news. When someone goes to a great restaurant, they talk about it, sometimes so much that we're kind of sick of hearing about it, but they'll tell us, oh, you got to go here, you got to try it out, I had a great meal
pictures
here.
of it on Instagram all the time.
Yeah, or when you have a new grandbaby or baby, people can't help, they check out my baby, this baby, isn't it the cutest baby that's ever been born to a human? So if those are things good as they are, why wouldn't we do that with something that has to do with eternity and immortal life? And like I said, never in a way that's judging or condemning other people, but always to say this is a great secret that can't stay hidden.
Presenting the good news. We believe the gospel is good news. Presenting it as a way of, this is who I am, and it's something that I can't not keep to myself.
And if I don't feel that way about the gospel and my faith, then that's a point maybe for prayer to say, why am I more excited about my new car, my new iPhone, my new grandchild than I am about Jesus Christ? So I think there are times, even as a priest, we look and say, why am I more passionate about a worldly thing? And then that's something where I need to invite God into a deeper conversion and holiness.
Yeah.
I think the last one that we were going to talk about, and then the next video we'll kind of get into the nitty-gritty, some of the specific issues. But here, the last principle would be, or objection that we hear often is, why bother voting? What difference does one person make?
Yeah. Well, I think, first of all, we have to remember that we're not just electing a president next month. We're also electing, governor, state reps, state senators, congressmen and women. All the way down to our local judges. Yeah, in the presidential election, there's 120 million people that vote in the state races for electoral votes. But you also have to remember there's local stuff too that's important, where among a smaller group of people, our vote really does make a much bigger impact. So that's an important thing to consider. The other thing I would say is the Catechism really reminds us that it's pretty close to an obligation to vote. It is an obligation for us to vote. The Catechism sort of puts three things together. It's paying taxes, defending our country if called upon to do so, and voting. That those three things are obligations of a good and faithful citizen. So I believe it's Catechism paragraph 2240, 2239 and 2240. They really remind us that it's our obligation to participate in the democratic process. That's a huge thing.
Yeah, and my parents always taught us growing up that if you don't participate, you can't complain.
Yeah,
so
true.
That's not a holy reason, but it's sort of like if you don't vote, then you got to keep
no
your
right
mouth
to
shut.
complain.
Yeah, because you didn't make your voice known, and that is an important part. Also, voting doesn't mean that we always choose what's set before us. There will be times where we say, I'm voting, but I'm going to refrain from voting for either of these candidates or any of these candidates. A funny story, when I was at a different parish, one of the priests I lived with, he didn't like any of the people for the local office, so he wrote me in. He voted for me, which priests aren't allowed to hold political office. But I guess what we're saying is just because you might look at a ballot and say there aren't any candidates that I feel morally able to vote for, you can still participate in other issues that are on the ballot or other candidates in other offices. It doesn't mean you have to choose someone on every race, but that we're participating in that process is very important.
Yeah, very, very important too.
And the last thing I would say when we are tempted to think my vote doesn't matter is look at history. Imagine if Mary said, what will my yes mean to God? How we would forever be impoverished because of her not participating. And maybe not even that dramatic. Look at some of the saints, some of the great figures in our history of our city and our country.
Yeah.
What if George Washington said, I'll let someone else handle this?
Yeah.
One person, mysteriously with the grace of God and other circumstances in history, one person can have a tremendous impact.
Yeah. Look at even St. Louis IX of France, the patron saint of our city, the patron saint of our archdiocese. He was a layman who was active in political life, but he also knew that God was more important. But he still made a great impact on his kingdom, on his people, and in his family, and in the whole church. And we venerate him for it today. So that's another person that we can really look to as someone who was active and involved in the political life, but also was a citizen of God's kingdom first. And that's an important thing to remember.
And we probably know this, but in case we don't just vote every 4 years for a new president. We also vote. Kind of how we exercise our right will be in these really annual small elections. Yeah. So it's good. I think this election seems to be wakening up, or at least causing people to try to encourage people for the first time, or maybe the first time in a long time, to participate. But as Catholics, this should be nothing new. This should be something that, this one, there are some high stakes here, but hopefully we've already been participating in our civic duty as citizens to vote, but also to be informed of what's going on, rather than all of a sudden waking up one day and saying, oh, how did we get here? Yeah. Now we got to do something about it.
Yeah. So again, thank you for listening in and tuning in. We'll be back sometime soon. We'll be talking about some specific issues and how do we navigate various issues, what hierarchy of issues there are. But this was sort of just our idea to talk about the principles first, because I think that's important. We can often very easily just get right to the specifics without stepping back and looking at the foundation of why we do what we do as Catholics. So we'll be looking for that next video soon. We'll be preaching on the election as well, hopefully somewhat soon.
Yes.
Just also be praying for one another. This is these are difficult times, even if you take the election out of the equation. And it's important that we pray for one another, that we can all make decisions that are in line with the truth and what we're taught as Catholics.
Amen. So have a wonderful rest of your week. And, of course, if we forgot to mention something important, let us know. But hopefully this will be helpful to you. So God bless you.
God bless you.